Our next speaker is the Product Marketing Manager for Dell Software Identity Access Management. IAM is his specialty. He'll be talking to us about the new parameter. Identity is the new parameter, but getting IAM right is no easy thing. Please give him a big round of applause. Todd Peterson.
Hi, as he mentioned, my name's Todd Peterson. I'm from America, if you can't tell. He said that I'm with Dell Software. That's actually no longer true. So Dell sold off all its software assets about a year ago to a private equity, and now we're an independent company called One Identity. So if you're familiar with Quest Software that was bought by Dell, and then Dell sold off everything, including Quest Software and the identity and access management assets, to form a new Quest Software and then this new organization called One Identity. So if you're familiar with any of that, it's the same great stuff, same great people, just new name, new owners, and a little bit more autonomy. So I've been to Australia a couple of times. I love this place. And being in Utah, we love Australia. So we have this basketball team, the Utah Jazz, and they kind of sucked for a number of years. They were actually pretty good this year, and one of the reasons was we have two Aussies on the team that were just excellent players. And so it really helped, so thanks for that. All right, so we're going to talk a little bit about identity and access management. So first off, who here is directly involved with the identity and access management at your organization? Raise your hand. Who here is kind of sort of involved with it? It's something that's within your scope. Who here doesn't care at all? You're the only one telling the truth. So thanks. So this is a great follow-on to that last one, and will be a letdown from the last presentation, but we'll try to do our best. If you think about all of these attacks that are coming, it really boils down to identity. So if somebody were to, if I were to pick up the USB, stick it in my computer, a bad guy was to get onto my system, how much damage can they do? I'm a marketing guy. So maybe they can write a press release that says bad things. Maybe they can email my boss and say bad things. They can't really steal corporate secrets. They can't get to the data. But they've gotten in the front door. So what they're going to do is they're going to do a series of lateral moves to get to some real crown jewels and then do the bad things. So if you can control who has access to what and you know who they are, you've really kind of cut that off at the knees. So let's talk a little bit about identity and access management. It all comes down to 4 A's. Authentication, which is how do you get onto the system and how do you prove to the system who you say you are. We all know that, username, password, things like that. Authorization, once you're on that system, what are you allowed to do and what are you not allowed to do based on who you authenticated as. Administration is how do you set all that stuff up? What processes do you go through? What technologies do you use? What do you do to give me the ability to authenticate and to set up what it means to be authorized? So that's really identity and access management. Then the 4th A is audit. It's really not required. I mean, the government requires it. Your ISO 9001 requires it. But that's basically proving that your authentication, your authorization, and your administration are happening according to the rules, and you can prove it. So then you look around, that kind of diamond there, and you see there's all kinds of buzzwords. You've heard of single sign-on. You've heard of provisioning. You've heard of attestation. You've heard of privileged account management. You've heard of multi-factor authentication. All these different things that different people are going to tell you, well, that is identity and access management. Then you look at the center, and what have you got? You've got all that stuff happening for access to applications, access to data, and access to administrative accounts. So that's really all, although all is kind of that's a lot of stuff, but that's what identity and access management is. So those of you who raised your hands in my first 2 questions, how many of you feel you've totally nailed identity and access management and you're doing it right? Okay, good, so everybody's being honest. Excellent. So the bottom line is, in order to get identity and access management right, you have a lot of rights that have to happen. You have to make sure that the right people have the right access to the right systems in the right way, at the right time, and that all the other right people say that it's okay that they have that and that you can prove it. So, that's a lot easier said than done. What? Don't use this one instead? Great, thank you. I'm really good at technology, by the way, in case you're wondering. All right, so all those things, that sounds great, sounds easy, that's all what we want to do, but it's pretty difficult. Why is it so difficult? Well, think about how your organization, your network, your technology has grown over the years. You've got all these different systems that have come in at different times. They all require different forms of authentication. They have a different idea of authorization. They have a different way that you do administration. So this complexity breeds inefficiency, and that breeds errors. Then you've got all this compliance stuff that's coming up. Compliance demands that you are accountable for that inefficiency and errors. So it demands that you prove that you can do this stuff the right way, and it's pretty hard to do it the right way. And the threats make it more urgent than ever. Back in the olden days when you had a mainframe and dumb terminals, it was pretty hard to hack in. Danger was a lot less than now, where everything's open. You've got all this cloud stuff. You've got all these people taking their computer home. You've got coffee shops and all that. So ask yourself a couple of questions. How long before an employee is fully provisioned? How many of you can honestly say that on day one, when I'm your new employee and I sit down at my desk on that first day, I fully have access to everything I need to do my job? Anyone? How many can get it on the same day? Same week? Same month? I mean, some of us have probably gone months without the full access until we finally really needed it. How sure are you that everyone actually has the right access? How many of you are in the boat where it's, I just hired Joe, he's going to do the same job as Bill, so give Joe the same access as Bill? And you tell all these guys in IT to do that. And what happens? Well, you forgot that Bill last year was covering for Sue, who was on leave, and so he had some extra rights added to him so he could do her job. And those were never turned off. And now Joe has the same rights as Sue, which is more than he needs to do his job. How many of you are in that situation? Or at least don't know you're not in that situation? I think that's the real key. How much do you rely on IT to get everything done? How many of your provisioning processes are email, spreadsheet, telephone call, follow-up, hope it happens? You call 10 different people because 10 different systems need access, and they're all give Bill the same access as Joe. How safe are your crown jewels? The data, the customer data, the systems, the stuff that really, really matters, do you absolutely know that it can only be accessed by the right people, the people that need to access it? That's the big question. And then, what is digital transformation doing to it all? You've got this influx of cloud applications, of new ways to access stuff, of things that are kind of out of your control that are demanded to be within the organization, within the enterprise. And what are those doing to it? Do you now have to reinvent the wheel and authenticate, authorize, and administer this cloud application totally independent of all this legacy on-prem stuff? Okay, so at the Gartner IAM Summit last year, Greg Kreisman gave us this quote. Now, he was talking to identity and access management people. He said 63% of you will be replacing one or more of your IAM technologies in the next 2 years. And the top reason was because the current solutions no longer support their evolving environment. I don't know if any of you are in that boat where you've got, new systems coming on and the old way you're doing things just simply doesn't work, so you're going to go shop for a new one. So what is the scope of this stuff? We talked about this a little bit earlier on that first slide, but it really boils down to 3 things. Access management is all that stuff you do to make sure, I'll go backwards here. Access management is all that stuff you do to make sure that the right people have the right access. How do you set it up? What do you do when they forget their password? How do you put them in the correct groups? What do you do with the directories? Privilege management is that same stuff for privileged accounts. How do you know that your administrators actually are the people they say they are and are doing the right things? Because normally it's a shared credential. It's pretty dangerous. And then governance is kind of that layer over the top of everything. How do you know that it's done right? Can you prove that whoever needs access actually does need that access and that they have the correct access? How do you prove that all those privileged accounts, all those administrators have the right access they need and are actually doing the right things? It's not somebody coming in from the outside pretending to be them. And then that now has to apply not only to your on-prem environment, but to all your SaaS stuff, and not only to regular users, but things like customers, partners, citizens. You've got all this stuff that's just made it more and more complex. So how do you actually get it right? I know that that's kind of pie in the sky, but it can be done. So first off, you're all focused on successful outcomes. This technology exists for the purpose of achieving a mission. If you're a commercial organization, it's making money. If you're a government, it's serving the citizens. If you're a higher education, it's serving students or research and those types of things. So you want this technology, this security practice, to bring you to those correct outcomes. So how do you do it? First off is technology. Every single vendor out here is going to say, buy my stuff and you will be secure. I'll tell you, buy my stuff and you will be secure. It's about a lot more than just simply buying the right technology. Even the best technology, if it's implemented poorly, isn't going to work. And a crappy technology that's implemented well with everything else added might actually do the job. So it's more about technology. Choose the right technology, but don't assume that technology is the answer. Second is strategy and vision. Why? What are you trying to accomplish with this? Is this to solve the problem du jour with no regard for the next problem? Is this siloed? Is it something that is only solving one problem and you're going to have to solve that same problem on another system or for another type of user in another way later? So think about the whole picture. Your internal staff and the skills they have has to support what you do. If you implement a technology and a vision that you can't support, it's going to fail. Flexibility. It must be able to deal with what you're dealing with today, but also with whatever you've got coming in the future. Digital transformation. Was your Novell network from 15 years ago equipped to handle your, SaaS-based stuff that you're dealing with now? All these new threats? Of course not. Support. The technology may be the best, but if you don't get the support from the vendor that will give you that successful outcome, it's worthless. So make sure that you get someone you can trust, that's not just in it for the short term to close the deal, but is in it for your success. And finally, partners. If you need people to help you deploy it, to train your staff, to get this up and running, make sure they're the right people. Make sure that they have your success as their priority, not theirs. So it's kind of a holistic approach is the way that you can have these successful outcomes. Now, that's a lot easier said than done as well. We're going to tell you buy the right technology. We're going to say, oh yeah, our strategy and vision is the right one. Our support's excellent. But it's really up to you. So what kinds of things can you focus on to make sure that you get that? So there's a number of things here, but if you think of identity and access management as Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Remember in Maslow's thing, you got at the bottom level is, just staying alive stuff, and at the top is the self-actualization, the fulfillment, being happy, being fulfilled. Think of identity and access management the same way. At the very bottom is just basically access, giving people what they need to do their job. Second would be security. Third would be management. Fourth would be control. And the very apex is governance, or that concept of doing it the right way. So everything you do in identity and access management in order to do it right, from the simplest multi-factor authentication solution to the most complex governance solution, is meant to drive you to that concept of governance, of doing it the right way. Second is business-driven. How many of you rely on IT for everything? All provisioning action has to run through IT. All decisions on authorization, who has access to what and what that means, is an IT decision. Does IT even know what people in finance should and should not have access to? They don't. They just know how to set that up. And so put as much control on the line of business as you possibly can. Put the people that know the why with the ability to do the how, instead of just the people with the how hoping that they know the why, if that makes any sense. Second is modular and integrated. You don't want to throw in a big, rigid framework that you're going to have to customize to solve your needs, and then a year later it doesn't solve your needs anymore, and you have to tear it down, rebuild, recustomize, retest, redeploy, and then it's obsolete again. Make sure that the solutions you use from any vendor, from a collection of vendors, are able to build upon each other. Let you start where you need to start and build from there. Add in what you need to. Don't add in what you don't need to add in. Future ready, kind of along the same lines, but make sure that the technologies that you're choosing, the practices, are built for whatever the unknown future will hold. Rely on standards. Rely on a vision. Rely on stuff that is open as opposed to stuff that is closed and customized. And finally, you're going to want rapid time to value. I don't know how many times I run into somebody who says they're in the 5th year of their 2-year IAM project and they're millions over budget. Anyone in that boat? Probably. What if you could solve those same problems in a flexible, modular, integrated way in a matter of months as opposed to years, and know that you fully solved them so that you can move on to the next thing? So that's what it takes to get IAM right, and really it's all focused on the successful outcomes. So thanks, that was awfully quick. I know that there is a lot to identity and access management. If any of you have any questions, anything you're concerned with, anything that you're thinking of tackling, come talk to us. We're in booth P13, which is just under the arch. We were the ones wearing those wonderful kimonos last night, which I'm not happy about, by the way. So come by. We'd be happy to talk to you, tell you what we can do, help you solve to get it right. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Todd. Have yourself a chopping board. And I thought you rocked it in a kimono, my friend. Give him another big round of applause. Thank you, Todd. Have to acknowledge One Identity and all of our sponsors. Simply would not be possible to put on the AusCERT experience for you without the generous support of our sponsors. Get around to the booths out there, say hello.